Good morning, everyone. As we begin on this Sunday morning to gather in fellowship, welcome. If this is your first, your second, your 100th time, or more, here today at Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation, you are welcome. We are made whole by having you all here today, whether in person or virtually. I ask that those of you here in person turn around and wave at the camera as we welcome those of you watching virtually. And maybe even during that time, take a few seconds to say hello to those sitting closest to you. Yes. Today's service will be led by Reverend Bob Klein, who will be leading today's service on justice, equity, and compassion, and which fits into this month's theme on equity. I'd like to thank the many people who helped put together each service. Our music director, Chris Tackett, song leader, Joel Yelland, our RE coordinator, Stacy Sosa, and the volunteers who help run RE, and to our audiovisual crew, which today is Todd McNeely and Alex Stuckey back there, as well as Lee McNeely doing the cameras. Thank you to our welcoming crew who greets those who come in, as well as our hospitality team who puts together refreshments after service. Please consider joining us afterwards for those refreshments. And finally, thank you to all of you for being a part of today's service. It is a pleasure to see all of you. Today's chalice lighting is from the book Lifting Our Voices, number 87 in the hymnal, by Louise E. Van Leer. We light this chalice not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across culture, distance, class, and language. We light this chalice that our religion may be a beacon of light, hope, and justice. We light this chalice to kindle our hearts and our minds. Thank you.
If you're following along at home and have a gray hymnal handy, it is number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing. We'll do the first and last verses, and won't you please stand, join us, and sing.
And feel free to harmonize.
Sing till earth and heavens ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith in the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray.
Joel, hold on one second. It's gorgeous. You're doing beautifully. Can we have the second verse slide, please? So everybody can sing along? Oh.
Sorry. I'll tell you what. I'll face here.
You know what? Let's just sing the first verse again. Ready?
Yeah, after all this,
Yeah.
I don't know what I did wrong. And sing to earth and heaven, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, on a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Thanks for flexibility.
For those of you who are not familiar with UU history, that goes back only a few years, William Sinkford was the first Black president of the UUA and the first Black man who was president of a mostly white religious community. These are his words, which I share, slightly adapted. We're a gentle and generous people, but let us not forget our anger. May it fuel not only our commitment to compassion, but also our commitment to make fundamental changes. Our vision of the beloved community must stand against a vision that would allow the privilege of the few to be accepted as just and even holy. Our religious vision must again and again ask, who is my neighbor? And strive always to include more and more of us. As we intone the words that gave birth to this nation, we the people, we are, and we should be, both a gentle and an angry people. I invite you now to hear these words shared by Joy Harjo. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. We are earth. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. We are earth. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. We are earth. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance language is, that life is. Remember, we are earth. All the readings today are from a resource called Lifting Our Voices, which some of you may know came out a few years ago from UUA, but it includes writings from many UUs, including many people who have become friends over the years. This meditation that I share by Wendy Bartell is one from a friend. She and her partner are ministers in, I think, New York now. But here are these words of meditation. We who dwell on the margins know about divisions, arbitrary and intentional, like land, like class, like culture. We make sharp borders around pieces of ourselves, and we blur the edges by being who we are, by expanding the circle. Beyond binaries, we multiply possibilities, languages, customs, practices, rituals, and ceremonies, not one narrative, but stories shared. Separation is illusion. Love transgresses borders between you, me, us, them, between secular and sacred. We need trust to strengthen our connection. We must dare to cross from my world into yours, from your world into mine, until we begin to weave a tapestry of faith and wonder aloud, whose are we? What is a nation? Who can own the earth?
How can we hear those beautiful words from Bill Sinkford in the first reading? We are a gentle, angry people, and not want to sing Holly Near's incredible anthem of the same title.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing for our lives.
Justice, equity, and compassion. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Martin Niemöller. Martin Niemöller, along with Dietrich Bonhoeffer, were leaders of the confessing church in Germany while the Nazis held power under Adolf Hitler. They opposed actions of the Nazis, but were unable to make much difference against Hitler's German nationalism, which mixed heroic German myth with pseudo-Christian values, promising a return to the Germanic greatness of old. Those who did not fit the Aryan ideal were not welcome, and were all too frequently eliminated to make room for those who did fit in the 12 years when Hitler's Nazis challenged the world. Without justice and equity, there will always be people at risk. Our second UU principle, dating from 1985, calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The importance of justice and compassion within our movement has been clear throughout our history, but the need for equity within Unitarian Universalism and throughout society has grown increasingly clearer in the 21st century. We have been making progress toward an equitable Unitarian Universalism, but our society seems to be growing less equitable and more divided. What can we do? With our society so focused on money and success, the financial definition of equity has become far more widely known and commonly used than the use of equity generally as a synonym for equality. But it is this latter use that concerns us in our UU principles and in our discussion this morning. Equity also suggests fairness between races, ages, those of varying gender identification, ability, and class. In the 21st century, Unitarian Universalism has become increasingly focused on matters of justice and equity both within our movement and in society at large. As a movement, our psychological shadow has long been that we are mostly a white, middle to upper class institution. Though we have strongly supported civil and human rights, we have remained mostly white and fairly well off. There have been attempts to address matters of race and class within Unitarian Universalism since the merger in 1961, but we have seen far more success in accepting and including LGBTQ persons than other matters until very recently. We've had far more success in supporting change in our nation than we have within our own movement. Now, in an effort to provide full disclosure, as an older white male, I've been hurt when told frequently in recent years that my voice no longer counts and my history of involvement in work for social justice no longer matters. When some writings came out of a dissident group of older white male ministers that were banned in 2019, I began thinking of moving up my retirement. Though COVID exhaustion was the more significant prompter for my retirement, the effort to move older white males who didn't totally support the party line out of leadership in our movement was a factor. For the record, I do not support all the actions of the dissidents, but I do think that some of their criticisms were valid. I do support almost all the changes in the UUA over recent years, and I very much support our new UUA president, Sophia Bettencourt. But I can really only tell my own story, so let me go back and tell you where I'm coming from. Many of you have seen me wearing a Chicago Cubs hat, or may notice that my cup is supporting the Cubs. Not necessarily the best time to do that when they're facing the Diamondbacks. But for those who have asked, I readily admit to being from the near western suburbs of Chicago. My father was raised Jewish, was a Chicago Democrat who joined the Illinois National Guard during World War II when he was initially turned down for bad eyes and flat feet. He fought at the Battle of the Bulge after being dropped in a glider after transferring to the 82nd Airborne. He was a gentle soul who never talked about the war and would have been diagnosed with PTSD if they did that back then. He finished his engineering degree on the GI Bill after marrying my mother. My mother was a Minnesota Democrat from a Catholic family and an early master's level graduate of the College of Engineering at the University of Minnesota. My parents decided to move to the suburbs join a Methodist church to raise my brother and me. Nevertheless, I grew up with the upheaval of the Democratic Convention of '68 and the fires in the city after MLK was assassinated. I was still a Methodist kid during the Civil Rights Movement and met more Black kids at camp than at school, but social injustice has always been an issue in my life and ministry. When I decided to go to seminary and into ministry, one of my hopes was to help reach out to youth of all races and genders and to help shape a more just and equitable world. In seminary, I spent an intern year at a Wyoming United Methodist Church in the middle of the Wind River Reservation, home to parts of the Arapaho and Shoshone nations. I have seen the worst of humanity displayed in anti-Semitism, racism, heterosexism, homophobia, and violence against women, all of which I abhor and preach against. But I am still a white male, now older, and I have benefited from white male privilege all my life. I no longer have the energy to attend many demonstrations and marches, but I'm not inclined to condemn everyone just because they are white males or have questions about the way change is happening. On the other hand, the injustices in our nation are getting worse, prompted in part by a racist bigot who is again seeking the presidency. The wealth gap between our American oligarchs and the rest of us is absolutely unconscionable. Even if some are pledging to donate the bulk of their fortunes, the imbalance of wealth and privilege should not exist in a modern civilized nation. Based on our lack of equitable healthcare, debtors, prisons, and unjust justice system, there are, of course, questions whether our nation really is civilized. But what can we do? We will have an opportunity to elect or re-elect national leadership next year, and that is often our best way to make our voices heard. But the choices will be limited, and the ability of those elected president is also often limited. Democrats in recent years have struggled to maintain unity, while Republicans have struggled to find honest, ethical leadership. If I had thought that Bernie Sanders had a chance last time around, I just about surely would have voted for him. He was the only one consistently calling for equity and justice for all in matters of healthcare, education, and the justice system, among other places. Equity is all about fairness, and our society has become one of the least fair nations in matters of race, education, gender, and opportunities for those coming from the lower classes of society. On Facebook, I'm reminded frequently that among the 30 or so richest nations on the earth, we are the only one that hasn't been able to figure out a way to provide health care for all, and that allows families to go bankrupt over medical expenses. Changing those alone would make our nation far more equitable. As members and friends of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we come together seeking many things: spiritual inspiration, friendship, a sense of purpose, an opportunity to be with others who have similar values and beliefs. Throughout my ministry, there has often been a divide between those seeking the spiritual and those seeking to make the world better through activism. These days, I think most of us would acknowledge that there is a need for both religious or spiritual grounding and activism for justice. When I was asked where I fit into the UU spectrum, I often answered that I was a web force religious humanist. Ask me about that later. But I more often preached about justice issues than most other things. My religion is often best expressed out in the natural world, at camp, under the stars, in Yosemite, Sequoia, or Yellowstone. But all those places, too, are threatened by greed and injustice and the lack of equity in providing enough for all to live with basic needs met. Currently, our society is failing so many people that we hardly deserve to call ourselves civilized. One major equity issue, which is closer to home for many of us here, is immigration. I'd not really gotten involved in that issue until I served on the board of the UU Justice Ministry of California. But from here, the flow of immigrants from Mexico, Central and South America, and the rest of the world is on our doorstep, as you all know. Of course, the governors of Texas and Florida are trying to move the issue of immigration to New York, Chicago, and the rest of the country. But there has been far too little effort to create a workable and equitable immigration process for our whole nation. You would think that with all the lies, threats, and political rhetoric about immigration, there would be more action. But for whatever reasons, immigrants remain political pawns while farms and factories across the country lack willing workers. Putting more pressure on political leaders is probably the most effective thing we could do to promote long-term solutions, while working also to meet the immediate needs of immigrant families. Makes a difference for those families and individuals, as you well know. I stopped calling myself a Christian when I saw how Christianity was being equated with American wealth, power, and success. Jesus was a Jew who gathered fishermen, spoke to disreputable women and tax collectors, invited the little children to come to him, fed and taught all those who came to him. Jesus challenged those with wealth, those in leadership, those with power, and was crucified as an insurrectionist, a troublemaker. When Christianity became the religion of empire under Constantine, at the same time when the early Unitarians were being labeled heretics, justice, equity, and compassion, and the beliefs of Jesus became hostages of empire. American empire continues that same pattern, as so many times throughout history, to use Jesus' name and the Christian religion to justify inhumanity and the power of empire. Our Unitarian Universalist religion calls us to practice and to promote justice, equity, and compassion, the words and practices of so many religious exemplars throughout history, including Jesus, rather than the words and practices of empire or the Christianity that is entangled with American empire. Our challenge as Unitarian Universalists is to take personal responsibility to do all that we can to care for the needs of others and to shape a world that is better than the one that we live in today. None of us alone can do all that must be done, but together we can make a difference on so many of the injustices and inequities of our society and our world in our time. With our votes and our voices, we may be able to make a difference in the stacking of the courts, the treatment of immigrants as criminals, the attacks on the rights of women and the control of their own bodies, and so many other injustices and inequities. Another thing most of us can do to better equip ourselves for the challenges of our time is to read history and science so that we know and can counter the half-truths and outright lies that are being told by those holding wealth and power. In this time of multiple messages and multiple influencers, it is often a challenge to find truth and meaning. It is easy to just repeat messages from prominent people, while it takes an effort to find the experts and research what is really happening. Sometimes we just need to pay attention and hear the truth speakers amidst the cacophony of self-serving voices. We don't have all the answers. There is wisdom in every religious, spiritual, and philosophical tradition, including a significant congruence of valuing each and every person and prioritizing justice, equity, and compassion. We are called to be our best and healthiest selves and to build the most just and equitable world we can. May we be and do all that we can. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen.
Going to make you stand for this one. Our closing hymn, number 148, if you have a hymnal handy, Let Freedom Span.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both north and south, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty wander everywhere, let us communion find. Companion be the golden cord, those binding humankind. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, and creed, let us make friendship, human worth, our common faith and deed. Then east and west will meet and share, and south shall build with north, one human commonwealth of good throughout the whole wide earth.
Thank you all for coming today. I'm going to read from Lifting Our Voices in 151 by Nelson Mandela. We understand it still that there is no easy road to freedom. We know it well that none of us acting alone can achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for national reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. Let each know that for each the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Let freedom reign. The newsletter named nurse trees as a symbol of this month's theme on equity. Nurse trees, such as the mesquite, ironwood, and palo verde, trees that are very common in this area, offer many things to the plants that shelter near them with the resources which allows them to live. Reflecting on this throughout this last week and listening to Reverend Klein's sermon, it made me wonder how UU itself can offer to our community in terms of shelter, and what role we offer to our wider community. I don't have much more than that in terms of it. I'm still reflecting on it. Thank you. Several announcements today. I'll be going through them. We're going to be offering Renew UU sessions Sunday, September 24th, October 1st, and October 8th. Renew UU is a series of 3 gatherings hosted by Reverend Matthew and MVU leaders to engage UU history, personal journeys, and how MVU functions. Starting after service on Sunday, September 24th, longtime members, those interested in becoming members, or those just curious about how we came to be who we are all welcome. Come to one or come to all 3. When you exit out these doors at the end of service, you'll see 2 baskets. The wooden bowl is for MVUU and the work of running this congregation. And the woven basket recipient this month is Interfaith Community Services. Interfaith Community Services offers a very valuable service to our community. They provide financial assistance to help stabilize families and people through crisis situations. They offer hands-on help with rides to doctors, assistance with navigating homelessness, job instability, food shortage, and navigating through the very complex systems people have to work through in order to get help. They've assisted in small home repairs for those who are unable to do so on their own. And they also value volunteers if anyone is interested. We have upcoming on September 30th, Tucson Pride, September 2023. We'll be hosting a table, and I believe we're looking for people to sign up for certain time periods. Our next slide, we have Dungeons and Dragons for young adults ages 18 to 35 if anyone's interested or know someone who would be interested. I believe the presenter will be teaching us how to play, teaching those who can attend how to play, and hopefully offering it to the wider congregation. We have a lot of things going on the next couple of months. Alice Bath will be here to teach Introductory Tarot today, and will be here again in October. I believe there's a limited number of spots, and there'll be a sign-on up going along for the October date that she'll be here. And finally, if you haven't gotten a chance, I believe there are 7 altars spread throughout the building and grounds, representing different themes and aspects of MVUU. I haven't found all of them, so I encourage as you walk around, look for them, take them in, see what they have to portray.
Closing reading, again from Lifting Our Voices, it's by 2 colleagues of mine that I very much treasure, Beverly and David Bumbaugh. Beverly has passed, and I've lost track with David, but I think he may still be in the Chicago area. After serving the church in Summit, New Jersey, he went on to teach at Meadville Lombard for several years. Our church exists to proclaim the gospel that each human being is infinitely precious, that the meaning of our lives lies hidden in our interactions with each other. We wish to be a church where we encounter each other with wonder, appreciation, and expectation, where we call out of each other's strengths, wisdom, and compassion that we never knew we had. In this spirit, we release our flame today.